morning, everybody.
Welcome to the Strawberry Mood, bringing you love, joy and positivity with our Reborn family. I'm Lulu.
And I'm Mr. B.
And look who we've got here.
I know.
And you know what this means?
It means Magic Memories.
It means Magic Memories Monday. And we're a little bit early, but I had this story written in good time and I was dying to get on with it. So, Mr. B, who have you got?
I have got the lovely Lacey Lou, or DeLacey's today.
And I've got Daphne. Now, a couple of things to explain to you for those who haven't seen this before. Magic Memories are audio dramas of our adventures, our lives with our two gorgeous girls, just, imaginary lives, but we have fun inventing them. And also featuring our magic leprechaun Bert, who looks after us and works his fingers to the bone, looking after us and our girls. So he's the one who can make the magic voices come out of the air and listen and let us be able to listen to the stories all over again. Another thing to explain in this week's story is that in the mythology I've invented for leprechauns in the winter, their danger is cold. So they live in big colonies, and when the colonies get cold and the temperature gets very low, their bodies conserve energy by taking a sleep day. And of course, Bert doesn't live in a colony, he lives in a nice warm house. But every now and again, if he lets himself get too cold, he can take a sleep day. This only happens in January and February. Having said that, I think the rest is self-evident and self-explanatory. It is a story. We have alternating months of 1 month we get a story and 1 month we get a kind of vignette from our lives. So it's a story this time. So we really hope you enjoy this story of the Grumple and the Sandwich.
Magic voices fill the air. Magic memories take us there.
No, he's isn't. He's wide awake.
Oh, my darling Bert. Are you feeling better?
I'm fine. I told Mummy I was fine. I told Daddy. I told everybody. And they still won't let me get up. I only took a sleep day for Star's sake. It's not fair.
But my Bert, darling, Mummy says you've been working too hard and that's what made you take the sleep day. And she was cross with you for turning your generator off. She says you've got to rest.
I had a slammy headache. I didn't know I was going to kick the duvet off and get so cold. I'm not used to this room anyway, not even after all this time. Oh, I wish I still had my closet. That wasn't an icebox like this room is.
It's not an icebox, and it's much bigger than your old closet was. This is a lovely room.
It's not. I don't like it. It's not the same. Anyway, what are you doing here at this time of night when you know you're supposed to be in bed?
We was worried, wasn't we, Iggy? And we thought you might still be hungry and thirsty, so we sneaked in the kitchen and got something for you, but we'll go away then, you're being such a grumple. Come on, Iggy, darling.
Oh, Impy, darling. Please don't go. Your Bert's very sorry. Oh, don't look like that. Come here and snuggle me. You know you can cure me of, what did you say, being a grumple?
All right, we're coming. Let's put this down first, and then we'll come up.
Oh, I didn't see you brought me anything. I was too grumpily. Come on then, what did you bring? I'm still hungry and thirsty too. Oh, what's in that glass?
Hot almond flour.
Wicked. Did Mummy make it?
No, Mummy and Daddy's both sleeps. It's very late. I sneaked in deep, like I said, and I made it in the microwave. It's not too hot.
What a lovely angel imp you are. Far too good for a grumple. Give it here. Oh, that smells awesome. I desperately need that snuggle.
Tummy.
Oh, that's better. Hey, what's that in your hand? Let's see. Oh, Impy, Mummy's white chocolate.
Mummy won't mind my darling, but she was worried too. But I know what would make my butt feel better. Here, you eat some of this, and then we can put your nice music back on.
Oh, Impy, I'm...
Surprise inside.
How am I supposed to talk to you with a mouthful of chocolate?
Now, that's better, isn't it, darling? So we put your music back on.
I'm sick of my music. Stay and talk for a bit if you're not too tired.
Of course we're not. Are we, Iki? We was asleep, but we woke up and we couldn't get back because we were so worried.
Ah, what a lovely Impy imp. Tell you what, would you like a story?
Oh, yes, I would, my darling bud, if you've got something new.
Well, do you know, I think I might have. You gave me the idea for it when you called me that thing.
Grumple?
Yes, I know about a Grumple and what he needed to make him less grumpy.
Come here, then. What? Are we ready, Iki? Now, don't interrupt, Iki, because I know what you can be like. Please go on, my bud.
All right, here we go. Once upon a time, there lived a Grumple. He really was an extraordinary little creature. He had a body like a big potato. His head was like an apple with a big bite taken out of it, which was his mouth. He had a snuffly nose that looked just like a mushroom. He had a pair of green eyes like peas. He had 2 long ears like cost lettuce leaves that flopped down at either side of his head.
How funny!
And he had a pair of arms and a pair of legs exactly like stick beans. They were very thin and would hardly hold up his body, so he was always dropping things or falling over.
Oh, the poor Grumple.
Well, yes, it was annoying for him, but it was hard to feel sorry for the Grumple Impy because he was always in such a filthy bad temper. He shouted at everyone and everything.
Oh, no!
He did. He shouted at the clouds when they rained on him. He shouted at the sun when it got too hot. He shouted so loudly at any animals that crossed his path that they ran right away. And he shouted worst of all at Mrs. Grumple and the 6 little Grumples, even the smallest one who was only a baby.
But that's not very nice.
No, it certainly isn't, Impy. Now one day the Grumple was in an even worse temper than usual. He'd been stomping about all day long trying to gather firewood. He'd frightened a squirrel who'd thrown nuts at him, which made him dance with rage. He'd rooted about picking up twigs, which he'd then dropped and had to pick up again, the few of them that didn't get lost in long grass and brambles. Then he didn't have enough and had to search about for more. By the time it began to get dark, he'd stomped back to the cave where he and his family lived in a mood to... What does Mummy say?
Spitfire and chew brimstone.
That's right. He slammed into the cave, kicked the chairs, knocked over the table, threw the twigs onto the floor and fell down.
Oh dear.
Aardbogs,
He growled.
bushy-tailed pink aardbogs, furry purple aardbogs with green spots. What a day indeed. Wife, I say wife, where have you got to? Do I have to do everything in this place without even your small help?
He's horrible.
I'd have to agree, Impy. Now shush. Mrs. Grumple hurried forward, picked up the twigs and made up the fire. The twigs, which were green and damp, immediately filled the whole place with choking smoke, a terrible smell, and nasty smuts of inky black soot.
Goodness gracious.
Scaly, suppurating, sooty black aardbogs, shouted the Grumple. You're all trying to wear me out, that's what it is. Here I am, working my arms off from morning to night, and the minute I get home you try to choke the breath out of me as well as making this whole place look and smell like a stink swamp.
Oh dear. I shouldn't laugh. Oh, really?
I know. Mrs. Grumple tried to calm him down. There, my dear, she said. The smoke will soon clear and I will clean up the mess. Come, sit in your easy chair and rest. The Grumple stomped towards his chair, tripped over the baby's cradle, fell down, stood up, and hopped about in fury.
Spit glittering, smoking hard bugs," he cried. "Now even the furniture's trying to kill me. Make yourself useful, wife. I'm starving hungry. Get me a sandwich this minute."
I wasn't getting nothing.
No, neither would I, Impy. But Mrs. Grumple just got up from her chair, put down the shawl she was knitting for the baby, went into the kitchen and made a big, fat, juicy sandwich. She cut it in half, put it on a wooden plate and brought it to the Grumple, who didn't even say thank you, but snatched it from her and began cramming it into his mouth.
It's so nasty.
I'm afraid so. Now, when he'd eaten every single bite of the sandwich without offering anyone else so much as a crumb, he looked all around. He looked at the comfy cave and all the little Grumples in their pyjamas ready for bed, and the gurgling baby and Mrs. Grumple, who was smiling quietly at him. And do you know what he said, Impy?
No, my bud. Oh, I hope it was something kind.
He only said, "Oh, I wish I could eat that sandwich again."
Oh, honestly.
I know. Mrs. Grumple looked worried because there wasn't any more bread, nor a crumb of anything to make another sandwich. When the Grumple found out that there was no more, he shouted worse than ever. Then he burst out blubbering and snuffling. Then he kicked all the furniture, fell down, got up, stomped into his bedroom, threw himself into bed, and after grumbling some more, he fell asleep.
I wouldn't put up with that, my bud. I wouldn't put up with it. We wouldn't, would we, Eeky? Mrs. Grumple should do something.
Right you are, Impy. Mrs. Grumple stayed up for a long time once she had the smuts cleaned up and all her children safe in their beds. She sat knitting and looking at the smoky fire. She thought, and finally she too fell asleep. But she had a secret smile on her face. She had had an idea.
Oh, what's he gonna do, my bud? Tell me.
I'm about to tell you now, Imp Face. Now the next morning the Grumple got up in his usual bad mood. He grumbled at his breakfast, tried to kick the fire, and got a burnt foot for his trouble. When he'd stopped dancing about and yelling, he stomped off into the woods to do whatever he did during the day. Scare animals mostly and gather a bit of wood if he felt like it, which he mostly didn't.
Me, Finn.
Once he'd gone, Mrs. Grumple cleaned the cave from top to bottom, got her children up and saw them off to school with a good hot breakfast inside them. As soon as all her chores were done, she put on her little yellow bonnet and headed off into the woods, being very careful to keep clear of where the Grumple was trying to kick a hedgehog, getting himself all prickled and shouting with pain louder than ever.
It serves him right.
Absolutely. Well, Mrs. Grumple walked for a long time through the woods until she came to a particular hollow tree. She stood at the tree's foot and called. "Who's that calling at this time of day?" said a sleepy voice.
Oh, who's that, my bud?
When Mrs. Grumple had called again, a tawny head and a pair of huge golden eyes appeared from a gap way up the tree. It was Olivia Owl. "Good day, Lady Olivia," said Mrs. Grumple. "Please forgive me for bothering you, but my family needs your help."
She's so sweet.
Yes, she is, Impy, but Olivia Owl was still half asleep. "Too early," she chewed. "Come back tonight." "I can't," said Mrs. Grumple. "Tonight it will be too late, and what I need will not take you long, if you would be so good."
Oh, my bud. What can an owl do to help her?
"Well, be quiet and you'll find out." There was a bit of a pause. Then Olivia Owl said, "What can I do? Tell me quickly. I want to go back to sleep." Mrs. Grumple took her carriage in both hands. "I need one of your special wish berries," she said. "I know this is the tree from which they grow, but I would not take one without asking. May I have one?"
Oh, she's so lovely.
Olivia Owl thought, yawned, thought a little more. Then her head disappeared inside the tree. Mrs. Grumple thought she had gone back to sleep. But then a beak appeared, just the beak, and it dropped a little golden berry down to her. Before Mrs. Grumple could even say thank you, the beak had disappeared, and Olivia Owl was fast asleep again.
It's darling. Now, what Mrs. Grumple want it do?
Well, Impy, Mrs. Grumple had lots of errands to do once she had the wishberry. First, she went foraging for food. Then she gathered some nice dry firewood. When she got back to the cave, she made a pot of hedge roast stew for when her children came home to dinner. Then she baked, then she made a few other secret preparations. And all the time, she was smiling that special secret smile.
She's gonna do some beans with that whisper. I wonder what she want to do.
Now, Mr. Grumple came home at last without any firewood. He'd fallen in a mud puddle, and he was a terrible mess, as well as being prickled all over by hedgehog spines. He trailed in, dripping mud and water, grumbling as usual.
Aardbogs,
He said,
spiny, spiky aardbogs, muddy, wet aardbogs. What a day! What a day indeed! Wife! I say, wife! Why are you never around when I need you? Oh, I'm soaking wet, prickled to pieces and starving to death. Make yourself useful. Get me a sandwich this minute. I tell him to get his own.
So would I, Impy. But Mrs. Grumple just went on smiling her secret smile. Then she took a brown crispy loaf of fresh cobnut bread which she'd just baked and cut off 2 thick slices. She spread each slice with golden butter which she'd just got that morning from Jessamine the Jersey cow at the nearest farm. Then she filled the sandwich with fresh green leaves and herbs, thinly sliced wild onions, a big tasty golden bean patty fresh from the pan, a sliced hard-boiled egg which she'd begged from Della Duck, and a thick layer of the cottage cheese that Mrs. Mary Mouse made for her family. When the top layer of bread was in place, the sandwich was about 1 inch thick.
Oh, wow!
That's right, you never saw such a big, thick, succulent sandwich, Impy. When it was ready, Mrs. Grumple cut it in half, put it onto a wooden plate, and turned with a smile to her husband. "As you've had such a bad day, my dear," she said, "why don't you clean up and jump into bed? Then I'll bring this in to you."
Oh, Icky darling!
The Grumple thought this was a very good idea. He was tired as well as hungry. So he went out to the stream just beside the cave, washed the mud off himself, then came back, stomped into his bedroom and flopped into bed. Mrs. Grumple brought the sandwich in, and without one word of thanks, he began at once to cram it into his mouth. Mrs. Grumple silently left the room, closing the door quietly behind her.
If I'd been Mrs. Grumple, I would have locked me, so we couldn't get out and bother no more.
Ah, but that wouldn't have solved anything, sweetie girl. And the Grumple would have been furious if it had been locked in. Mrs. Grumple just wanted him to be happy. So she stood outside Grumple's bedroom door, listening to him chewing, chuffing and snorting as he gobbled down his sandwich. At last he swallowed the very last bite. Mrs. Grumple waited, twisting her hands together anxiously. Finally, the Grumple's voice came muffled from behind the door.
"Oh, I wish I could eat that sandwich again,"
it said. Mrs. Grumple waited, twisting her hands together more anxiously than ever. In less than a minute, she heard a cry of surprise, and then more gobbling, chewing, chuffing and snorting.
"Oh, Icky darling! The whisperry!"
That's right, Impy Imp. The Grumple didn't know that into the thick layer of cottage cheese in his sandwich, Mrs. Grumple had crushed the golden wishberry that Olivia Owl had given her. She went into the room she shared with all her children and snuggled into bed, smiling broadly, knowing that everything was going to be all right from now on.
Oh, wow!
And do you know, Impy, from that day to this, the Grumple isn't a Grumple any more. He's as happy as he can be. He slips out to the stream when he needs to, smiles at Mrs. Grumple and the children, then just hurries back to his room and jumps into bed. He goes to sleep, wakes up, and during every day he happily goes on eating and eating his magic sandwich, again and again and again.
Oh, my bird, what a lovely one! Thank you, my darling. Do you know something? I think Mrs. Grumple was tired not to run away from Grumple or do something really naughty to him.
Well, if she'd done either of those things, Princess, the Grumple would have stayed a Grumple forever, wouldn't he? And anyway, I've told you before, doing nasty things to anyone who's nasty to you isn't a good thing. It just makes everything worse. You were kind to me when I was being a Grumple, and look, I'm not one anymore, am I? Mind you, I might need a little bit of help to stay happy. I don't need a sandwich, but I would like another piece of that chocolate.
You can have some, my darling. And tomorrow, I'll even bring you a sandwich if Mummy says you don't stay in bed. Now, open wide, surprise inside.
So there we are.
So there we are. And I really hope you enjoyed that one. I enjoyed writing it, and I think you had a good time reading it. Although
I
you get
had
the
a
giggles,
lovely
didn't you?
time reading it, especially Mr. Grumple. Yes. Wife? I said, wife? I love that bit.
And it's really nice that we can do this because Daphne didn't get to hear it, obviously.
No, you can see her here, but she's not in this
She's
one.
not in this
so
one.
she heard it for the first time.
She's heard it for the first time. She's only in every other month.
Yes,
But of course, the star of our show has to be in every month.
of
Don't you?
course.
Because they're your magic memories.
Yes,
All right, everybody. We will see you again really soon.
yes.
Hopefully I'll be back tomorrow with any luck and a following wind. We're going to say take care of yourselves.
Enjoy your babies
Thank you for watching.
and have a great day.
And
let's be good to each other.
Shall we?
Bye-bye.